How's it going, guys? Welcome back to StarForge Workshop, and today I'm going to show you how to build this wrecker helmet. The Bad Batch is one of my favorite animated shows. I just love those guys, and I really wanted to build one of their helmets, and eventually I think I will build the rest of them. But for now, let me show you how I did this one.
Printing time. I printed this on my FlashForge Adventurer 5M. I didn't have my Elegoo Neptune Form Max yet, so I ended up having to cut this helmet up into a bunch of pieces to be able to fit it on the print plate. Not my favorite way to do things, but it ended up working out pretty well. After gluing everything together with your typical super glue, I just used a soldering iron just to weld all of the pieces together that were all glued. And then I moved over to using some U-POL spot putty. This is a little bit more expensive than your typical Bondo, but I think it works a lot better. It's stronger and it spreads a little bit smoother, so it's harder to sand, but it leads to a smoother finish. So just a lot of rubbing this all over the seams that I just welded. Then it was time just to do some wet sanding with 600 grit. This is by far the most time-consuming process, as many of you prop makers know. Just lots and lots of sanding. I probably spent 2 to 3 hours just making sure this thing was entirely smooth. And as you can see, I still had more to do here even. But I used a fine tip Dremel just to get all of the U-POL putty out of the sharp crevices so I didn't lose any detail. It's easy to get kind of messy when you're spreading that on with gloves. So I wanted to try something new here. I used plastic wood as my layer line filler with some acetone instead of using a Bondo. I just saw somebody try it and I figured I wanted to. I don't think I'm going to do this method anymore just because it just feels really gritty. It goes on kind of bumpy. Maybe I didn't do the ratio quite well enough. It did the job, I think, but I think doing like a Bondo did a little bit better. So this is probably going to be the last time I do it this way, but hopefully I'll have another use for this plastic wood filler later on. Here's where I was using a detail palm sander. I think I was using 220 grit. So this is when I was sanding off all of that plastic wood filler, and it just left a lot of super chunky dust everywhere and a lot of stuff to clean out of the detail crevices of the helmet. So like I said, I won't do it this way anymore, but it did do the job. Here I just started running over everything with a U-POL filler primer. So it's kind of the sibling product to the spot putty I was using. This is a really good filler primer. It is a little bit more expensive, but highly recommend it if you want to go the extra mile with some filler primer. And then just to be clear, I did do yet another coat of the U-POL spot putty and more just heavy wet sanding just to get it perfectly smooth. And then I moved into using a black flat primer and paint. So this is both a primer and a paint. It's Really good product from Rust-Oleum, so just your typical paint. And then the long process of masking this thing off. That took an absolute eternity, but it's always worth it taking the extra time to get your tape right. And then here I was using a Rust-Oleum flat metallic gunmetal. This was just a great paint. It looked so good after it was all dry. Had a couple little paint chips here, but it was pretty easy to touch up that little stuff. This is a lesson learned to make sure your paint is totally cured before you tape it. This was my absolute favorite part of this project, just dry brushing a cheap white acrylic onto the helmet. I was really nervous to try to do this because it's kind of a detailed paint job, so I just took it slow and was looking at some references just to try to match the paint job as close as I could to get that moppy wrecker look. And you'll see here in the end, I think it looks pretty close. point, what I was doing here is just penciling on the 99, that red 99 from the first season. That's my favorite look of the helmet, so I wanted to do that. I wanted to pencil it on because I didn't just want to try to freehand it immediately. I don't think I was good enough for that. And I did purposefully make it like a little crooked. I just thought it would kind of match the moppy wrecker look to do it that way. After the full paint job was done, it's time to start weathering this bad boy up. So I just took a folded up piece of 120 grit sandpaper and just went with that white acrylic and just started scratching it all up. Sometimes I didn't even use the paint, I just used the sandpaper to get some scuffs, and then I would use some paper towels just to wipe it if I ever got a little too much on it. And I just tried to go pretty scratched up on it, but I didn't tried to not go overboard with it. Here I was using my favorite product, the silver rub and buff, that makes me look way better than I actually am. It gives you that really cool, just worn down metal look, and I just tried to put this all over the hard edges, and I think it came out really cool and weathered looking. Just to finish it all up before I put my satin clear coat on it, is I just used a Vallejo dark wash and just dabbed it lightly, and then used the dry part of the sponge brush just to rub it all around, just to give it that extra dirty look on top of all the scratches to make it really look like he's been in some battle.
Well, that's enough out of me. Thanks so much for stopping by and watching the video. I really appreciate it if you were able to watch the whole thing. This was a really fun build, and I'm looking forward to building the rest of the guys, and I will put a video up of them once I'm able to do that. So if you would like, I would really appreciate it if you wanted to subscribe to the channel, and I will put all of the links to my socials down below, and also my email if you want to get a hold of me for any reason. I'd love to chat about props, anything like that. So for now, I'm signing off. Thanks so much.